Welcome to Popternative, where we dive into topical discussions from the worlds of pop culture, social media, and sports. Here is your host, Peter Remoliotis, aka PD Beats.
PD Beats here from Popternative, speaking to Hannah, Cheramy, Pegah Ghafoori, and Corteon more about From, which is playing on Epix. Thank you all for your time. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you.
It's pretty exciting. I mean, there's so much to talk. We'll start, Hannah, with you. I mean, there's so much kind of happening in the show. It got announced it was coming out. Now episodes are kind of coming out week after week. I mean, what are the vibes like in terms of now, like, people get to finally see like what you've been working on, basically?
It's crazy. I mean, like, filming it, I had no idea how people were gonna react. Like, I knew it was gonna be like good because it had so many awesome people in it and like associated with it. So I was like, okay, it's gonna be good. But like actually seeing the reaction from people and actually seeing like all of the theories and like all of the love and like the amount of stuff that people put into the show is just like, it's just so rewarding, you know, like just seeing.
100%. Pegah, it's very interesting because I think you're working on a genre bending show. I think there's a lot of components that make it kind of fit, like people in the horror genre love it. I think people love the thriller. I think people love the science fiction component. Do you know that you're working on like a genre bending show, or do you ever think about that at all?
No, while I was filming, I think maybe personally I was going more through an existential crisis, but I'm glad that they're getting the job they wanted to get done, and that people are receiving it well. Yep. But when you're with that character and those storylines, you're not thinking so much, oh, this is going to be really scary. Obviously, you can't miss that, but it does feel more like you're just trying to survive day by day and, stay close to your people and make sure they make it through another night.
Absolutely. Corteon, but the horror component is there. Horror is so big right now. Is it exciting to be part of a project that all the horror fans are kind of loving because the genre is exploding and kind of growing day by day?
Yeah. I mean, horror is my favorite genre. Mm-hmm. And like for the last 2 years, that's really all I've been doing. So it's been like a pleasure. And honestly, to have Harold as the lead, as like an iconic Black actor to lead the charge in a horror genre is just something really exciting. And I mean, it's definitely something like, it's fun to play with monsters, to play with people, to play with cool set pieces, all the symbols and all that kind of stuff. It's so exciting. And I think there's a resurgence in the horror genre again. Like the last 5 years, people are taking it seriously in a way that they haven't really since like the 70s and 80s. So it's cool to be a part of that new, identity growing within horror on television.
Absolutely. This is the part now of the interview where I have kind of the specific questions about all of your characters. Hannah, we'll start with you. I mean, your character, there's a few characters like this in the show, but specifically yours has this kind of interesting dynamic with her family and her maybe new family, so to speak, with Fatima at the house, so to speak. And I find that's a really exciting, interesting challenge, I feel like, for an actor, because you have both those kind of circles that you're playing with now, the family and the house, basically. What's that like, kind of seeing those relationships unfold and like going back and forth a little bit?
I mean, it's so interesting because like when you show up to the first episode, first day of filming, I'm meeting all these people for the first time. So it's like, I'm supposed to have known my family for Julie's entire life, but just meeting these guys. But in reality, I'm just meeting everybody. So it's an interesting balance to like try to act like I don't know these people and I do know these people, but like I actually don't know anybody. So it was really like interesting, like meeting everybody and finding that balance of like playing strangers and playing like family and stuff and changing it up and progressing with the strangers into like now a found family type of situation.
100%. What's that like, playing a character with a lot of that mystery, Pegah?
I mean, you guys see it as mystery. Fatima's just trying to be genuine. And honestly, if you guys are seeing it as she's hiding something, dig into that. Maybe she is, maybe she isn't. That's kind of what makes her great, I think.
The Reddit forums are not sure about Fatima. I don't know. Like, Hannah, Corteon, do you go on the Reddits at all or see all the comments, social media? They're not sure about this character.
Hannah sends enough to me for me to be fully aware of what they think of me.
it's really interesting. And big episode coming up. I mean, with Fatima's party for her, or whatever you want to call it, and it's interesting to see how there is that kind of dynamic where people people trust her and everything, but then in the show I feel like, but the audience is kind of like not sure,
not having it.
Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, it's really, really interesting. Corteon, my question for you: you mentioned Harold, the father-son dynamic and kind of back and forth. It's there throughout the whole show. It's sprinkled throughout all of From, basically. I don't think it's ever going away. What's it kind of like about that? Sometimes it's more direct, where you're chatting about it and everything, but it's always there. What do you think about that? Where that theme and that father-son kind of issues, or whatever you call it, is always going to be around From on Epix.
No, it was definitely one of the big draws of like character when I first got the audition. It was like the thing that stood out the most to me. And right off the bat, it was just a really cool challenge to work opposite somebody like him, who's such an established and just honestly just one of the greatest actors of our generation and previous generations, in my opinion. And to find that dynamic was so interesting and challenging at times. Like I remember my first day on set was this scene in episode 1 where he comes to see me and Fatima and I'm painting her. Yeah. And we had about 4 or 5 hours on at base camp before we went over to the studio. And again, it's my first day. And I was trying to find, I was like, okay, I had a great lunch with Harold the week before and we hit it off. And I was trying to find a way I was like, we're too close now. Like we have too great of a relationship. So he came to set and I basically just tried to ignore him, like to his face for hours. And it got really awkward and just really weird, but it kind of worked perfectly because, okay, we found what Ellis and Boyd would kind of operate like, but it was definitely cringy at moments. But no, throughout the whole series, I mean, it's just interesting to see how it affects, other relationships, how it brings, the way Ellis trusts people or the way Ellis allows people into his life, when he meets Fatima, obviously they're madly in love, or even bringing in Julie and Ethan and the Matthews family. And it's a unique dynamic that I think the people are going to be really surprised and pleased with how it kind of grows towards the finale of the show.
I want you all to kind of comment on this, but Hannah, I'll start with you. I mean, did you notice it right away? Like the dynamic of all three of your characters, it's right there. There's kind of a lot going on with all three of your characters. Did you notice that like right away you're reading the script? That you're like, oh, like my character is going to be really like involved with Pegah and Corteon's characters, or like did it kind of just happen throughout the shoot?
It kind of just happened. Like, I mean, when I first got the scripts, obviously like Julie's, all of her first stuff is with the Matthews family. I know my audition scene was with Fatima, and it's a scene up in Fatima and Ellis's bedroom. It's like where they're looking out. So I had that audition scene. So I knew that there would be a moment with her, and I knew that I would meet Ellis because he was also mentioned in the dialogue, but I had no clue like to the extent of what it was going to be. And like, I see those like running in the rain scenes and Ellis is like tying them up, and I'm like, I don't see these guys really clicking, but it's like, then you actually get the scripts like weekly or bi-weekly. And then you're like, oh, okay. So like, this is where it's going. You're like on your toes the whole time. You never know like what direction it's going to go.
It's so crazy to see it. That's interesting. The directions, the push and pull of the directions is amazing. I feel like there's just so much happening in the show. And like, I'm doing this interview right now. There's so many different things that come to mind when you're asking your questions. But Pegah, it's interesting too. All the characters in this show, in this town, they have no choice. They have to adapt. They have to be together as a community, or, they will die. You know what I mean? Like there's obviously some monsters out there. They have no choice. Some characters more than others are on board. They want to be part of the community. There are some that aren't having it. What's that like in terms of seeing that community aspect? But there is that kind of struggle from several characters on From that just don't want to come to the conclusion that this is the situation they're in and there's nothing else they could do about it, but kind of adapt and help everyone out. What do you think about that dynamic?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely the community, and then there's Jade. But I feel like if you can adapt, it makes your life a lot easier. Obviously, you want to make sure that you can survive the monsters outside, but it's mentioned in a couple of episodes where, the monsters inside creep up on you without noticing. At least these ones whisper or shriek. But, community also helps trying to feel a little bit more at home. Obviously, we're all homesick. It's not like we have accepted, okay, this is the new life. Obviously, if we could go home, like we would. But the community helps, having the love, having a purpose. Like for Fatima, it's making sure that Julie can adapt. It's making sure Ellis and his dad figure shit out.
Yeah.
And it's also for me, it's like for Fatima herself, it's, a family is very important for her. So for her, it's making sure her family is okay.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
She created a family and takes care of them.
To add to that, Corteon, a little bit with the family component and the community component, it's a community component that's dealing with a situation where it's 0 to 100 on From in terms of what happens. Like you'll see it, you know what I mean? Like the pacing sometimes just gets me. Like I'm watching it, it's like I'm watching, and then boom, 100%. You know what I mean? That's, I feel like, very interesting as an actor to kind of play a character in a community, but it's so like 0 to 100 with everything happening, right? Is that interesting as well for you?
Yeah, I mean, and as like the more we learned about our characters and like Ellis in particular, it kind of put a few things together because off the top, Ellis was a more collected kind of person. Like although he was dealing with like an immense amount of emotional trauma, which we explore throughout the series, but right off the top, they were just telling me all these things happened that he wasn't ready to kind of face yet, and it made him a bit of a stone. But at times we were figuring out, why is he not loosey-goosey? Why is he not, exploring? And then as you find out more about the character, you'll see why he's able to remain so calm and composed and stuff like that. But it definitely is very interesting to place these characters, especially at the Colony House. We've all kind of learned to live with what's going on. Yeah. So then the second something does happen, you see how people truly react to these situations. But then you also see how much they actually care about one another and how, we're not so different from the town. Like we're not just living to, party and, smoke weed all day. We have priorities, and that's each other.
And they're going to see in this next episode, not going into spoilers, there's disruptive things that are happening that happen to be because the Matthews family show up and there's all this disruption that happens, but it's not necessarily the Matthews. I feel like they're just like wrong place at the wrong time.
No. Matthews haven't done anything. Yeah, they haven't done anything. You guys haven't done anything. You guys really just pulled up and then shit just started getting wild. It was not at all your fault. You guys are honestly helping us. Yeah,
and then there's Julie.
People probably think it's possible.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, Julie's just kicking it.
A new episode is going to be airing on Sunday, and I've seen it, and I'm going to say something right now that there's one of the scariest things I've ever seen in a TV show or movie in this episode, and it's crazy. And I'm a big horror movie fan. Does it blow your mind a little bit that I just told you that? Basically, like that's probably one of the scariest things I've ever seen, and I've seen like a lot of crazy horror movies, and that's easily like one of the scariest things. Like I had nightmares. Dope. I had to. But it's pretty crazy to be part of that, right? Like people are going to talk about that. I'm just saying.
Imagine standing with it right in front of your face, like 3 feet away, and like blood everywhere, and be like, "What the hell do I do?" It's nightmare fuel for sure.
It's so crazy. No, people are going to see it. No, it's crazy. And I wanted to thank you all for coming on Popternative, chatting about From on Epix. Seriously, I love the show. And I want to thank you all for your time. It was so great chatting with all of you.
Thanks for having us.
Very quickly, could we plug away on the social medias? Hannah, where do people follow you on social media to keep up to date with everything? Probably Instagram?
Yeah, Instagram, Twitter. They're both Hannah Cheramy, just my name.
Ooh. Pegah?
Twitter and Instagram. On Instagram, it's Pegah.Ghafoori. On Twitter, it's capital Pegah, capital P Pegah, and then capital G Ghafoori.
Amazing. Corteon, what about you?
Instagram, you can find me on. It's just Corteon. And then on Twitter, it's Corteon More. And then, hit my TikTok because I'm about to start making some From. And Pegah and Hannah are going to get mad at me because last year I wasn't on TikTok and I didn't want to do it. But I found the niche. I found the niche world that I can live in. And
that's so hard.
Yeah, hey, when we go back to season 2, I owe you guys a couple, so I promise I'll.
Yes,
Yeah, I
you
was
do.
about to say now they always have that on you now, where they're like,
Nah, I know, and I was so against it, and then I came home and I found my calling.
It was funny
TikTok's
back in the day for me, like growing up, MySpace was the one. No one wanted to get a MySpace, and then everyone got a MySpace, and it was.
And then they got it. I know. I'll accept the fact that I'm late to the punch, but I'm there now.
Well, this has been Popternative. YouTube.com/Popternative for previous episodes. Check out From on Epix. Until next time, this is Hannah, Pegah, and Corteon, and PD Beats signing off.
Thank you for tuning in to Popternative. Make sure to check out our past episodes of Popternative on YouTube. Be sure to like Popternative on Facebook and follow us on Twitter.
This has been an Autograph Communications production.